Hi, everyone. Thank you to our panelists, first of all, for doing this. And I hope you guys are excited. First, I'll read a little bit about our panelists. So, Stacy Koch grew up around Scranton area and moved to Lehigh Valley around 2012. She has an Associate of Science in Education from Lackawanna College and a Bachelor's of Science in Secondary Education in English with a minor in Psychology from East Stroudsburg University. For 2 years, she was a freelance writer, photographer, and columnist for Lehigh Valley Press. Then in 2015, she was offered a part-time editorial assistant position with the company, which is what her current position is now. And she works on 3 of 8 local newspapers. She designs the layouts of each school page, writes articles, columns, and opinion pieces, takes photos at events, edits articles from freelancers, approves pages for publishing, takes over full editor responsibilities when the editor is on vacation and more. So that's pretty cool. Carly Bunk. Carly is originally from Johnstown, Pennsylvania. She works at the Chambersburg Public Opinion within the USA Today network as a watchdog reporter. Recently received a bachelor's degree in journalism at Point Park University. She previously served as editor-in-chief for PPU's student newspaper, The Globe, and has also held titles of features editor, staff writer, and copy editor. She generally writes either news or features articles. She completed an internship at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette as a web intern in the summer of 2018 and worked at the Pittsburgh City paper in the summer of 2017, where she held the position of multimedia intern. And then we have Samantha Galvez. Samantha joined the Fox 43 news team in July 2018. Prior to that, she worked at the York County Economic Alliance, where she was the marketing and communications manager. But it's not her first go around in journalism. She grew up in Mechanicsburg and attended Trinity High School before graduating from Millersville University. There she received a degree in speech communications with an option in broadcasting. She landed her first job in 2013 as a one-woman band reporter in Hazleton before moving to Harrisonburg, Virginia to join the WHSV news team as an anchor and reporter in 2014. Samantha was also a reporter at ABC 27 News in Harrisburg, and she loves being back in her hometown. And then our fourth panelist, Jamie, might join us soon. I'll just tell you a bit about her. She's a two-time Edward R. Murrow winner and an Emmy-winning journalist with 16 additional Emmy nominations for her investigative deep dives, documentary work, and election coverage. She's a recipient of multiple awards from the Pennsylvania Association of Broadcasters and the Golden Quills. In her time at Fox 43, Jamie Bittner's reporting covered a case now in Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Bittner has also covered multiple national news stories, including when she served as executive producer at Pittsburgh's WTAE during the tragedy of the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. She was called upon to fly to Florida to provide coverage of the Pulse nightclub shooting and the Baltimore riots following the death of Freddie Gray. Bittner's highly recognized documentary projects were the recipients of multiple awards, tackle topics such as the oil and gas industry and the state of local police coverage. Bittner is a graduate of Penn State University, where she earned her degree in journalism with minors in political science and history. Her multiple internships include CNN's The Capitol Gang and CBS Evening News. Previously, she held positions at the York Dispatch, WLWT in Cincinnati, and has executive producer and head of election coverage for WTAE in Pittsburgh. Bittner began her career as an associate producer at Fox 43 and is thrilled to be back reporting for her hometown to cover the communities that she loves. All right, so all right, so we don't have any questions in the Q&A. So I'll just ask, we'll start with Carly. Was this your first choice of career? And who and what inspired you to select the field in which you are working?
So actually, I've always loved journalism. I was involved with a newspaper in high school and the yearbook, but I actually started my education in secondary education is what my major was. But I decided that I love teaching, but I loved writing more and reporting more. So I decided to switch my major, and I've been happy ever since. I've had a lot of really influential professors and teachers, even back in high school, that really encouraged my writing and encouraged me to follow my dreams.
Alrighty, and Stacy?
My past was kind of similar to Carly's. I went to school for education and I did all the classes and I got the student teaching and I just got the student teaching. I said, no, this is not for me. So I did not go into teaching. I was a freelancer for a little bit, for a couple of years for Lehigh Valley Press. And in 2015, they offered me a part-time editorial assistant. And so that's where I am now. As far as my passion and why I got into this, I have always loved English. I always loved reading and writing, especially grammar and punctuation. So even though I didn't want to go into teaching, I knew that I still wanted to do something in English and writing. So same, I had a lot of amazing professors who told me that I was a great writer. So being a freelance writer, kind of diving in that way was one way that I knew I could get to the editorial side of it more.
Alrighty. And Jamie, we did read your bio, so the girls have heard a little bit about yourself. I'll have, if you want to answer this question, what was this your first choice of career? Who and what inspired you to select the field in which you're working?
Sure. Sorry, I'm a little late to the chat. I was rushing back from an assignment, actually, so I had to get to a good area. It wouldn't let me in, so apologies, girls, for being a little late here. Journalism actually came as a surprise to me. At the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I kept jumbling along to different things, and nothing was really, hitting a chord with me. And I signed up randomly for a journalism class in high school, and I turned out to love it. And the moment I started doing it, I just knew that it was something I wanted to do forever, and it really hit a chord with me. And I was very lucky because a lot of people don't find something that they love to do that early. And the first time I took a journalism class, I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do.
Awesome. And Samantha?
Hi, yes. So my journey is kind of funny. It was my senior year of high school, and I think probably October-ish, and my mom was like, you got to start applying. First semester's almost over, or I guess first quarter is almost over. And so she's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't really know. A lot of people know that I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I advocate a lot for type 1 diabetes. So I thought maybe I wanted to do something with, advocacy, or maybe even become a registered dietitian, something like that. But then my mom said, well, you love to talk. Why don't you just go be on the news? Just like that. And so I was like, okay. And she's like, let's start looking for, for state schools that have a broadcast program. Ended up at Millersville. And I mean, that was like literally how it happened. I didn't, not that I hated school, but I didn't like love math or love English. I ended up being good at it through hard work, not because it was like a natural talent to me. So really just the suggestion by my mom, and here we are.
Alrighty. Okay, so we'll start with Carly again. What is your schedule like, and what is a typical day like for you?
So on the average day, I typically work 8:30 to 4:30. That can kind of change depending on if I'm covering something in the evening or on the weekend. But typically I start out, because the Chambersburg Public Opinion is part of a cluster of newspapers in South Central PA. We actually have morning meetings every day with 3 other newsrooms, one in York, one in Lebanon, and one in Hanover. And we just kind of share with our group of editors and reporters what we're working on that day. So it could be, I'm covering a local event. I'm, conducting some interviews for a feature story, or I could be out taking photos as well. So I start my day off just kind of checking in with our newsrooms. And usually I'll check the court dockets and see if there's any criminal cases that would require our coverage. I also look at some other local news websites. We were just kind of merged with some other papers in our immediate area. So we are able to share content between our 4 sites. So usually I'll check in on those sites, see if there's anything that would really appeal to our audiences, and I'll put that into our system, which is called Presto. It's similar to, I'd say maybe a WordPress site, if that's something that you ladies are familiar with. And other than that, I just really like to get out in the community as much as possible. It's been a little difficult these past couple weeks with COVID-19 and everything. So a lot of my reporting has been done through social media, through phone calls, email, but I definitely prefer to be out interviewing people in person. So that's my average day. Usually I'll write anywhere from 3 to 5 stories a week. Some weeks it's more, some weeks it's less. And that also includes maybe collaborating with some other reporters on, a longer term project, collaborating with visual journalists that are, talented in photography and videography. So I'd say collaboration is a huge part of my day. And I think that's something that I love most about my job.
All right, Stacy?
My typical day starts around 8:30 and ends around 3:30. And because I'm part-time, I work Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. And a little bit on the weekend, I put some hours in. And I'm currently working from home. I'm not in the office right now because of COVID-19. You all know it's a little different right now. And I'm at the computer all day. Not being a freelancer anymore, being an editorial assistant, I'm at the computer. I'm editing articles that come in and writing captions for photos, and I am attaching the article to the page that it's going to go on to for actual publishing. I'm writing emails, and every once in a while I will do a phone or email interview. I just finished an article on a woman who organized a group, and the group project right now is creating a garden for the local food bank. So that was just one article that I finished right now. When we go back to the office, we will be getting out more and taking photos and doing our regular in-person interviews. But right now it's just a lot of email and over the phone. And but the majority of my time right now is working on the computer and editing and attaching and seeing whatever my editor needs to get done for that week. Our paper comes out on Thursday, so we need to be done Wednesday. So after deadline on Wednesday, it's kind of like and then you start in a couple of days, you get ready for the next week. So those are my typical days.
Interesting. Alrighty, Samantha, what is your schedule like, and what is a typical day for you?
So my answer would be totally different if we were not, back in March. My answer would have been different from today, but I'll give you more of the March version because hopefully that's what we'll be getting back to. So a lot of reporters, at least in TV, have a consistent schedule. It's one of 3 shifts. There's the normal 9 to 6 day side. There's the 2 to 11 night side. And then there's the wonky, like 12 a.m. to, 8 a.m. or 3 a.m. to kind of just some morning shift because we have shows those times. So usually 5 days a week, whether your weekends or not, you do that. For me though, I'm a reporter 3 days a week, and 2 days a week I'm an anchor, which means I sit at the desk. Reporting means that you're out in the field telling the story, but anchoring is when you're reading the stories on the teleprompter. So the days that I'm reporting, I'm day side, so I'm 9 to 6. But the days that I'm anchoring, I'm night side, so I'm 2 to 10 or 2 to 11. And that's Friday, Saturday. So a lot of people who are in journalism will tell you that you make a lot of sacrifices in this business. whether that's small, just like working holidays, or whether it's me who's got this split shift, or, it's very rare it's not impossible, but it's rare to have a perfect Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, holidays off, weekends off. It's not typical, but it certainly is attainable, achievable. So those 3 days a week that I am reporting, I'm responsible for pitching all of my story ideas. And people always ask me, well, where do you find your stories? That's an easier question, to ask than it is to answer. Basically, you have sources, or you see events happening online, or people will email you ideas, or people who are desperate to get their cause out or their problem out will send it to you. They'll somehow get in touch with you. Or if it's a slow news day, which we've all happens a lot more than not, you have to find the stories. You have to talk to people on the street, ask them what's going on, or, hey, I'm looking for a story, anything. So once that happens, typically the next morning, or, I do that the night before, and I also work ahead a little bit to find stories. But then the morning of, we have a 9 a.m. editorial meeting. We discuss the stories that all the reporters want to pitch, or, we discuss all the pitches, and then we get assigned either one of our ideas, or if there's something big going on and they have to shift you, they might say, Sam, we love that story. Can you set it up another day because we got to send you to this meeting instead? So there's a lot of, unpredictability all the time. It's very fast paced. Once I get my assignment, whether it's given to me or it's one of the stories I, set up or pitched, I then either set up the interview if it's new to me and I don't know, and it was assigned to me that on the spot, or if it's one that I did the day before, I'll call those people and say, hey, we're on, I confirm with them that's what we're doing. And from there, it's just busy, go. You shoot it, you write it, you edit it, you report it. Thankfully, Jamie and I both have photographers, so we do get an extra set of hands, but this is my fourth job at a station, and my fourth job at a station, but my first 3 stations, I was a one-man band, meaning I shot, wrote, edited, pitched all of my stories. I had 0 help. So it's a lot of work. And then, as soon as it's done, as soon as it airs, you have to start thinking about tomorrow and what you're going to pitch. And hopefully it's nice when it's already lined up, or it's nice when it's like something obviously big happening. But you can spend a lot of long nights and days looking for good scoops because, it's not always handed to you. So once we shoot the interviews, then my photographer and I, we load up the card of footage. We go through all the interviews. We pick which sound bites we want to use. I string it together with, my voice, and I tell the story in pieces, and then it has to get edited and put on the air. And then even then, our job's not done. We have to put it on the web. We have to put it on social media. There's a lot that goes into it, and people in news will tell you that they don't eat lunch a lot. If it's for you, it's definitely for you, but I make it sound easy, but it takes a lot of years and a lot of practice to get good at it, and to just even find a rhythm or a flow, or to even figure out, this is the kind of person I need to contact for this story, or this is where I find this information. It just takes a lot of years and a lot of dedication.
All righty, and Jamie?
Jamie, you're
You're still
muted.
Okay, sorry, I echo Sam's statements with the job. It was a lot different a few months ago. In some ways, it's a little better now, I would say. In some ways, it's not. And it's very atypical every single day. I will say that I am not working in an office right now, technically, but I'm also not technically working at home. So I'm actually still out in the field every day covering stories, and we do interview people, and we're doing it in a whole different way than we did it before. With masks on. If you saw me on the field right now, I'd be having a mask on. And then that's one of the reasons why I had to rush home to get internet service. And we're standing 6 to 10 feet away from people to interview. And, we're just doing things in a whole different way. And it's interesting to see how the industry is evolving with that. I still work typically like a 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 schedule. It just depends on how many stories I'm handling. I'll say that since COVID-19 began, my workload has really doubled, I would say, because typically instead of handling just a few stories, I'm working on multiple stories at once. Today I wrote a story for today, and I wrote a story that's going to air tomorrow morning in the morning newscast. Yesterday, I shot a story that's going to air on Thursday, and I aired a different story that day too as well. So I'm handling a lot more stuff now. And for someone like me who wants to go a little deeper into stories and not just do the surface, this is what's happening. I really try to do research ahead of time if I can, so that I have those facts and interesting tidbits early on if I know I'm going to be assigned to something the next day. But it is a lot of preparation, and it's a lot of organization, especially because anymore with the internet, you know, if you get one thing wrong, you are crucified. So it's more important than ever to really have your facts in a row. And it comes at a time when journalists are really handling more things than they've ever handled before. We're handling newscasts, social media, web duties. On top of that, we're handling multiple stories sometimes, in addition to multiple sources. People are texting me about stories I'm doing 3 days from now on the same day of today. So I would say it's definitely a career for anyone who seeks adventure. It's also a career for anyone who loves to not sit at a desk all day long, because you're doing something new. And that's what I love about it. I wake up every morning sometimes not knowing what I'm doing. You never know where your day can go. But because of that, you also don't know sometimes when you're going to get off. So, but you know, I think my family truthfully understands that. They're used to it at this point, and it stops becoming a surprise to some people after 2 years because they understand your career.
That actually brings me to my next question, which is what are the best and worst parts of your job? So if you want to just continue, Jamie, or do you feel like you answered the question already?
Sure. I mean, I think the best part of my job is just talking and meeting people. I mean, that's why I got into this industry, is to meet people who perhaps aren't like me and maybe have different viewpoints from me. And I think that if you're one of those people who enjoys having conversations with people, it's a great career for you. I feel like you become a mini expert in almost everything you do. So it becomes very easy to talk to everyone about almost anything, because at some point you probably covered a story about it and you know some little weird tidbit from 2 years ago about it. So it makes it great because of the fact that, I mean, I used to be very shy and I didn't do a lot of talking, and it actually serves me well in this industry because I'm very good at listening. But it's also served me well in making me more confident to talk to people and to be more open and honest with people and have hard conversations with people, because I think that's how progress is made, is having those tough conversations with folks and seeing where people's heads are at. And that's what I love about journalism, is that whether you agree with the opinions or not, you see where two sides of the issues are coming, and you see where there might be compromise. And that's very exciting, especially for me who likes to cover politics, because then you see those ideas become law. And that's very, very exciting, especially when you cover something, a story that perhaps nobody was listening to that person, and it becomes a thing that changes how the state is run. And it's incredible to know that your job every day can make that difference, that you can change laws, and you can create the process that goes into things that will hit the governor's desk later on. And so I think that you can't put a price on that. But I would say the worst thing about the industry, and every journalist I think is going to tell you this, is that it does have a tendency to become your life, and you have to set some really big boundaries sometimes. And it's very hard saying no at times because you're surrounded by people who are giving. And it's hard sometimes to say no because you don't want to look like the person that doesn't want to do it. And sometimes you become really invested in those stories, and you want to cover that story for another 14 hours, but you've already been on the clock for 12. So the fact of the matter is setting boundaries in your life so that your family, your friends don't listen to you. I think that's the hardest part of the job. Is just making that time to reset your head and make sure that you're participating in the community too, because I'm a big believer that as a journalist, you need to be a part of the community as well and to give back to the community, because you also take a lot from the community by constantly asking from them, So I'm getting better at that as I go along, but I will admit when I started off in this career, I gave a lot of my life to my career and didn't set those boundaries early on.
Alrighty. Carly, what are the best and worst parts of your job?
So I would say my favorite part about the job is definitely how different it is every single day. I'm not doing the same exact thing. I'm not going into the office and sitting at a desk for 8 hours straight every single day. I get to be a part of some really amazing local events. I have the opportunity to really highlight some amazing people in our community. And I also feel like in journalism, and this is one thing that really encourages me to stay involved in this field, is the fact that you can really make a difference with your words. And it might not always be right away. I recently did a story about a local, or not quite local, but really a statewide story about a juvenile detention center where there were some allegations of child abuse happening there. And my heart really went out to these kids that really just never had a chance in life. And it's a story that will stick with me for the rest of my life. I spent 6 months really investigating and interviewing people, and it really made a difference, I think. It really put it out there for our audience to read and demand change. So I think that, you know, you might not always see the changes that you're impacting, but that's one of the best parts about journalism, is you really can make a difference in people's lives. And I'd say that some of the more challenging aspects of this career is definitely the criticism that you receive from the public as well. With social media nowadays, it's just a barrage of comments and criticism and people questioning your credibility. So that's why it's so important to really double down on your facts and make sure that what you're reporting is the truth. And that's something that I take very seriously, and the other reporters and editors in my newsroom takes very seriously. So it's great to have a good team around you when that does get tough, especially, you know, when you're stretched in so many different directions. Like Jamie was saying, you're sometimes working on, you know, 4 different stories at once, especially now with the pandemic and elections coming up. It can get really hectic, but that's what makes it exciting. So I definitely would encourage anybody who loves, you know, change and flexibility and learning something new every day to consider journalism, especially because, you know, you really are making a difference and you really are building connections in the community. I just moved to this area almost exactly a year ago, and I already feel like I've met so many amazing people that make such a difference in the town that we live in and surrounding communities. So that's one of the great things about it. I definitely prefer to report on more feature stories, profiles of really interesting people, and that's really what keeps me going every day, is finding those really interesting people or those really interesting hobbies and diving a little bit more into them.
Awesome. And Stacey?
I'm going to start with the challenging part first and then end on a good note. I would say definitely some of the challenging parts are, you know, taking photos of a motor vehicle accident, you know, and they have a cloth over the person who passed away, or, you know, doing an interview with someone who is doing a fundraiser for a family who died, and he or she gets emotional, and then you get emotional, and you know, that's a very tough part. And, you know, reading and editing stories of somebody who committed something criminally, especially to a child, that's really hard to read and do and publish. But but we do it anyway because it needs to be done. Some of the best parts are obviously just, I love what I'm doing. So no matter what it is, if it's editing or doing an interview, I love English and grammar and punctuation. So I go to work every day, whether it's at the office or at home, I'm happy. And I love bringing local, state, and federal news to the residents of the places that we publish for. And I love writing opinion pieces. One recent one I wrote on about Daniel Tiger and Mr. Rogers and his infectious kindness for everyone. And I got an email a couple weeks later from a pastor of church just saying how much she loved my opinion piece, and it was just wonderful. So there's a couple of the really, really good, heartwarming parts of my job.
Alrighty, and Samantha, best.
I'll also start with the negatives first. Kind of what Stacy said. The worst part is when you get emotionally invested and it's sad. Like it can be anywhere from death to I did a story about a guy who his business had really weird circumstance. His business had been like crushed because of a collapse. A building collapsed on it, and so he's not able to run his business. He's losing all this money. He still has to pay taxes. And you're thinking, okay, this is pretty standard cut and dry. But once you talk to him, you're like, this impacts his family and there's nothing he can do about it until the lawyers work things out. So just things, you know, when you get really, I wanted to give him my salary. I was like, here you go. But you know, you have to kind of separate work from, you know, from your emotions. So that's tough. I'll go back to schedules, man. I can't tell you how many Christmases I've worked, you know, Thanksgivings, Black Fridays, you name it, I've worked it. I've worked every Saturday. I've worked every Sunday. I've worked 3 a.m. So, you know, I will say you have flexibility on some level, maybe like how you want to schedule your interviews, but as a job, I would say there's not too much flexibility because you have a certain deadline every day and you have to turn every day. Again, rare exceptions, but I would just say it's not like, you know, somebody who works at an office where they're like, I'll work from home today, barring COVID, you know, I'll work from home today and do that. That's just not how it is in news. On the flip side though, I do really love telling stories and meeting people. Like I've met people who I've become good friends with, and now I was a guest at their wedding. You know, there's just people that you meet who strike a chord with you, and you just become really good friends, and not even good friends, but your eyes are open to different parts of the world and different issues, and things are going on that you had no idea, you know, was even a thing. And I'll say this too, you know, I'll give it to you straight. You're not going to become a millionaire in journalism. You don't make a lot of money. You have to really love what you're doing and you have to be passionate about it. But if you're in it for, you know, trying to make a lot of money, it's not going to happen unless, you know, unless you've been doing this for 30 years and you're back in the age when anchors used to make a ton of money and reporters. But you know, a lot of people do leave because they have family to support, or they just, you know, they need a break from it. And that does happen. You see them leave to go to market, people in news go to marketing or communications or something like that. But I will say this, I did do marketing for 1 year. I left news I've done news for like 7 years, and 1 year I left. And my best day at my marketing job was never as good as I felt when I told a good story. Like, I liked my marketing job. I liked the perks that it came with. I had an office and, you know, I had a lot of flexibility, but I never felt as accomplished as I did when I told a really good story in news, or when I held someone accountable for what they did, or when we asked the tough questions, or when I told a really nice piece about someone who's struggling, you know. So my favorite part, I guess the worst parts of my job are kind of the flexibility, the hours, and the pay. The best part is that I love telling stories and I love being a part of the community. And I love like knowing what's going on.
Alrighty. Let's see. What can girls do now to prepare for a career in news and media? So right now, we have girls as young as 6th grade. So what can they do now to kind of prepare for that? We'll start with Stacy.
I would definitely say keep writing, keep reading, as much as you can, whether it's fun or professionally. If this is really the profession that you want to go into, then keep on doing it, keep on practicing it, and just get better with it each time that you do. And I would say to the girls who are a little bit older, get your education right away. I did not go to school right away after high school. It was about 2 years later, a year and a half or 2 years later, that I went to Lackawanna College, and then I transferred to ESU. I wish I didn't do that, kind of. I wish I went right away. And also, I wish that I would have acted on my realization that I didn't want to go into teaching sooner, and that I kind of would have geared my goal more towards journalism. I don't have a degree in journalism, and I wish I did. I wish that I do. I still have the job that I would want right now, but I just wish I had that journalism degree behind me. But I'm at a position in my life right now where I'm married and I have a son, and I'm just not in that kind of mindset anymore where I would want to go back to school. So I wish that I would have done that right away, and I would have believed my heart that, you know, teaching was not the direction I wanted to go to. And make connections, you know, get advice from people and help in job recommendations, and just talk to as many people as you can. And that saying of, you know, it's all who you know, sometimes is very true. So you don't have to think of, you know, oh, I'm going to do this all by myself. You know, I'm going to do it my way and this way. You know, if somebody offers you some help or a job recommendation, or, you know, something like that, take it. You know, you don't have to do this all by yourself. It's sometimes all who you know, and people are out there who want to help you and see you succeed. So take their help and advice.
Awesome. Carly?
So I would say try to get involved in, you know, writing for your school newspaper. Get involved with, you know, looking at the news every day. Just that's part of my day too, is just keeping up with current events. And also I would encourage you to reach out to your local newspaper. When I was in high school, I had the opportunity through my high school newspaper to submit columns pretty regularly to one of the local town newspapers. So that was a really great opportunity to, you know, get excited about seeing my name in print, which was it's not quite what it is anymore, because a lot of, you know, newspapers are really focused online now. But I would say to really read a lot, whether that's, you know, news, current events, or, you know, just fiction or nonfiction or whatever you're interested in. I really credit my love of writing to the fact that my mom would sit down and read with me when I was younger, even, you know, as young as kindergarten. I remember reading with her Junie B. Jones books, and it just really encouraged me to keep that love of learning, which is really what journalism is just learning something new every day and conveying that to your audience. Also, if your heart is set on journalism, I'd really do some research on what kind of journalism you'd like to do. Broadcast journalism is very different from newspapers. I typically don't work holidays. I typically don't work weekends. I have a way more flexible schedule because our deadlines aren't as hard as, you know, coming up with content for 3 shows a day. So, but we do have, you know, a 24-hour news cycle just like anybody else. So I just, you know, look into the differences of what aspects of journalism you can get into. Editing is really different than reporting. I've kind of looked into both avenues, but I'm reporting now. Eventually, I'd like to get to the point where I am editing a little bit more, but I'm just starting out. So there's some more time for that. And I'd also look into some local opportunities, in Girl Scouts. There's so many, different fun activities that I did when I was a Girl Scout. I was in Girl Scouts for 8 years. And I think that also kind of encouraged that love of learning a little bit too. So really just get involved. That's definitely the first step in having a successful career in journalism.
Alrighty. Jamie?
Yeah, I'll go back to my experience as a Girl Scout too. Utilize those cookie sales to get used to talking to people. That's what I would say. I mean, talking to complete strangers, see if you can strike up a conversation with them and get them to stay. I mean, if you can do that, you're on your way to being a journalist. So I would tell you to utilize those cookie sales while you're out and about in the community. Not right now during a pandemic, obviously, but do it when you're out and about. I would also say writing is huge. So write as much as you can. I mean, when I was a kid, I had diaries full of writings, everything from a boy I liked to something that annoyed me at school. I look back now at them and cringe, but they set the foundations for how to tell a clear story in the future. Number 3, I would say, and you're going to drive your parents mad doing this, but question everything. It's amazing how many stories you'll get just by asking, why is it that way? And like a lot of people say, well, it's always been that way. But why? And when you start looking into why things are a certain way, or if you even just listen to people talk, I can't tell you how many times I got ideas for a news story when somebody was talking to me about something that was totally unrelated to it. I interviewed state police once about a story, and I got a whole other idea about a story to do for breathalyzers, just because I was talking to them and they mentioned one thing. So pay attention. I would say too, know your history, because history is so important, because especially when you're young, you don't understand why is the world this way? Well, take a look back into history and see how we got to this point, and see what mistakes were made and see if any mistakes are being repeated, because those are stories, and that's setting a foundation. And it's also setting a foundation, being able to talk to anyone in any generation, so you're not just going around and saying, okay, boomer, that you can talk to that boomer about why things are that way and why they think that way. And that's important, that you can relate to people and you can get them to tell their stories and you can get them to tell the truth, so that some progress can actually start happening. And I would say start paying attention to politics, because politics affects your life. Whether you think a politician is stupid or dumb, that person's making policies. And if you're not paying attention to what they're doing, it's going to eventually impact your life, whether you like it or not, because once a bill becomes law, it's very, very hard to change. So you want to be able to know about those things before they become law, so you can discuss them. And I think having those foundations would make you a very strong journalist, and have a large mix of friends. Don't just be friends with people who look like you and act like you. Go and talk to somebody that you have nothing in common with and get to know them, because the world is made up of a lot of different people. And if you only think one way or see the world one way, you're already going to be behind the 8 ball, especially in the media industry, because you need to be able to talk to everybody.
Some great advice so far. Samantha?
Yes, so I agree with Carly. Make sure you do your research, about what type of journalism, because while they have a lot of similarities, they also have a lot of differences. I'll say this, in college, more for college, but also you can do this in high school too. Get involved. I was part of MUTV, Millersville University's television station. I also did their radio station, WIXQ. There's the school newspaper you should get involved in. That's not always something you can have access to in secondary education, but like in colleges and high schools, there's usually some sort of program. I literally didn't know anything about what I was doing. I had no idea. Like I said, I didn't even know if I could write. Like I just, I just joined all these clubs and was like, hey, be my friend. And I learned. So I could tell, I liked TV, or, I liked radio, or, I didn't like paper, or, so if you try out all these avenues while you can, you get a feel for it and you get your feet wet in all of these industries. And I'll say this, I did do all of them. I did the radio, the newspaper, and I loved them all. I loved different aspects of them all, but certainly one is not meant for another person. So it's, it is really important to look into the differences. But yeah, again, I do think that if you know that this is what you want to do, I would say just kind of fight your fears, because I wasn't really shy, but I was a little self-conscious about, kind of putting myself out there in college. But I wish I had done it sooner, because I could have started a demo tape, which is what you use, little collection of your work to send to jobs. And, I would have done more if I could redo it all over again. So, that's really important to getting your feet wet. And to what Jamie said about politics, I wish I liked politics. I'd say 9 times out of 10, like, I don't like politics when they have me cover something. But at the same time, once I get into it, I'm like, this is really important. People need to know what they're doing. So, people need to know about this because it's going to impact them. So knowing about politics, even if it's not your thing, is super important. I have to remind myself of this often, when I shy away from political stories. So yeah, just as much as you can get involved, and if your middle school doesn't offer that, see if your high school does, but joining those groups, the National Broadcasting Society, all that kind of stuff is what really helped me.
Awesome. And we'll come back to you, Samantha. What kind of opportunities are available in your field for people with a high school diploma, bachelor's, master's, and also, like, how does experience play into that?
So I believe to be a reporter, you have to have a bachelor's. That means a 4-year degree. And I think it needs to be in communications. I'm sure there's situations, I know I've heard of people, including Stacy, that, they were able to kind of transfer their skills from somewhere else, but I know that a 4-year degree is required. I'll say this, I'm one of the few who says college, I learned most of what I do on the job. I had, day one, they gave me a camera and a mic and said, go. And that's kind of like how I learned. I made every mistake in the book. I came back with no audio, no video, no, blue video, white, just black, like, you know what I mean? So I made every single mistake in the book. Not saying college can't help, but I'll say what really prepared me for the job was once I got the job. I had to, like, learn it all on the spot. I don't know. I mean, I took college classes, that showed you how to use a camera and showed you how to write. But I think until you're doing it all the time and repetition and using their camera equipment and their gear, that's when you really learn a lot. And I'll say this too. One thing that really, really, really helps me is watching other people. If I just set the time, take the time once a week for an hour, scroll through Twitter, social media, and watch people in big market stories or watch other people's work, I get so many ideas and so many, like, oh, I love how they started that story, or I like how they wrote that. I would have never thought to lead with that, or whatever. And that's one way that I feel like I've grown as a journalist and I've expanded the way I do things, is because I've watched other experts. So that's the other thing too with college and stuff like that. The more you watch people, start watching the news, start reading the paper, you're going to see the way people do things. So I'll say, at least for my field, a 4-year degree is required. But I learned a lot of it on the job. So that's kind of my journey.
Carly?
I would definitely agree with Sam. I definitely learned most of what I use in my everyday job as from my experience as the editor of the college newspaper. Just because we ran it just like any typical newsroom would run. So I would say that experience was single-handedly what I credit a lot of my achievements thus far to. But other than that, I mean, it wasn't too long ago in journalism that you could start out as, a paper boy and work your way up in the job. So I think experience definitely is the most important thing. I do believe a bachelor's degree is now really required, but take advantage of those other classes in college as well, because as a journalist, you have to be well-rounded. You have to know a little tidbits of almost everything. My one college professor used to say that journalists are the best trivia players, because you just kind of learn so many little tidbits that lead to different stories and circle back around. So I'd say that definitely a college degree is required, but take advantage of other opportunities, internships, interning at the Post-Gazette, interning at the city paper, both in Pittsburgh, really gave me exposure to what, the real world newsroom is like. And I also credit those experiences as well to molding me into the reporter that I am today. Also, just pay attention to other media outlets, like Sam had mentioned before as well. Whether it's your local newspaper or, CNN or Fox News or NBC, all those, or even, strictly online outlets too, that are really growing in this market as well. Just be well-rounded and read a lot. And I think that is the first step in, that education, but definitely take advantage of any extra opportunities that you can.
Alrighty, Stacy?
I'm only going to speak for my job because I'm sure a lot of places are different. So I can only speak for where I'm coming from. But for me, starting as a freelancer, I wouldn't probably necessarily have had to have a college degree. It's kind of basically like if you're a good writer, you take some good photos. Okay, you can be a freelancer for us. For an editorial assistant, I still don't know if you would need to have a college degree. Again, I do. Journalism degree would certainly help, and obviously with your pay rate, that would certainly help to have a journalism degree compared to not having a journalism degree. When I applied for the editorial, well, when it was offered to me, I had made it known when I was a freelancer. I told them, I wanted to write as much as I can and take as photos as much as I can, and I love the editing part of it, and I love writing, and this is a good company. And so making that known to the editor of the three newspapers put an idea in her head when that position opened up to contact me. She said, "Oh, I think Stacy might be really good for this job. She's a good writer." She told me she wanted to maybe move up somehow. So making that known to her was a very good idea for me to do. And when I sat with her during the interview, I showed her examples of articles and stories and opinion pieces, poems even, of what I did for my college newspaper. So definitely make it known to, say, if you are a freelance writer and you want to go up into the company more, make it known that you would like to do that and voice your opinion, and let them know how much you like writing for them. And during the interview, bring your best writing pieces that you're very proud of to show them.
Great advice. Alrighty, and Jamie?
Yeah, I would say that I agree with Sam. If you're gonna go into this industry, a lot of people prefer a bachelor's degree. I will speak frankly, I don't really think you need a master's degree in this industry. A lot of places will tell you to do it if you want to become like a college professor or something in the future. But if you're asking me, save your money. And I don't think you're going to learn anything more out there than you'd be learning in the field. You're learning much more in the field in this job. But I will say that if you do not have the opportunity to get your bachelor's degree, that doesn't mean you can't be a writer. I mean, you can be anything you want to be if you try hard enough, but you might want to start trying to like blog or, art side, things on your own. and show people your potential so that they will pay attention to you. But there's ton opportunities now with the internet on things you can write for. And it's not just media companies that are hiring writers. Hospitals are hiring writers, the state's hiring writers, because they need people to be able to send out press releases and articles on things that they're doing. So there are other opportunities to write, even if you're not in a quote unquote newsroom. So just don't limit yourself to thinking you can't do it just because you don't have a degree. But once again, I would write as much as you can if you're not going to get a bachelor's degree, because you're going to need samples of things that you can do, and people are going to ask that for that.
All right. We're just about out of time. I just want to thank everyone for participating in the career chat. And we are going to send an email out with everyone's social media handles and all the information. So the girls, you know, if they want to reach out for more advice or they have specific questions, they can reach out to you all. And then of course, this recording will be on our social media, and we can send you a copy of the recording. And that's it. So I want to say thank you. And I hope everyone, you know, was informative and everyone enjoyed the chat.
Thank you for having us on.
Thank you so much. And please feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions. I love, you know, talking with young people about, you know, what they're looking to do in journalism especially. So please feel free, follow me, reach out, message me on Facebook.
Well, alrighty. Oh,
Right,
Rebecca,
I will go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you everyone so much. And I hope you all have a wonderful holiday weekend. And I hope at least some of you have the holiday weekend off. All right, bye.
Bye guys, thanks.